Next, we will be discussing on Power Unplugged, integrating India's grid. India's energy future lies in integrating renewable sources into our national grid. In this session, we will explore the evolving landscape of power generation and grid management, the strategies that will enable India to meet its growing energy demand sustainably, and how advancements in energy storage, smart grids, and decentralized power are reshaping the way India is powered.
Please welcome our esteemed speakers, Mr. Ayush Sinhal, Mr. Narrindra Surana, Mr. Rajesh Kothari, Mr. Govind Saboo, and Mr. Deepak Pandey.
Energy transition that we have seen in the first panel from thermal to solar and renewables. So generation side is done. It's an established thing now that solar transition, energy transition is happening, and now if solar and everything renewables is getting installed, there will be need to evacuate power from the generating side to the transmission side as well. So let's understand how the transmission sector is how the growth opportunities will come in the transition sector. So Deepak ji, how has the power sector, because you have been in the industry since so long, so how has the sector evolved from, past so many years to now, and how do you see it going forward on the transfer? What new changes are you seeing in the country in terms of energy transition plus the additional power demand that is coming in from AI and all? So how do you see the shift that is happening, and how is it different this time?
So, thanks Gunjan. See, India is shining, and everything happens with India shining, and we are all sitting here, the elite audience. If you see the transition which has happened, the consumption pattern has changed. And just in last 2 years itself, means the average consumption of power, which was around 1200 units per year, has already increased to around 1395 units per year. So there is a rapid growth in terms of demand. However, this is just world's 1/3 demand, world's average 1/3. So average in the world, you have around 3,200 per capita, and for the developed country it is around 10,000. So it is 1/10. So although we have grown in terms of demand, but still we are lagging behind as far as average power consumption is concerned globally, and with respect to the developed countries, because we aspire to be a developed country very fast. Now, if you see, the pattern which has changed from the peak demand point of view. So the peak demand currently is roughly around 265 gigawatt at a transmission level. Now this 265 gigawatt will touch around 400 gigawatt by 2030. So that is the projection. Whereas if you look from the regulatory point of view, there is a policy called RPO, Renewable Purchase Obligation. So all the utilities have to buy a couple of percentage of renewable power out of the total power. So the renewable power obligation, which is currently roughly around 23%, will increase to around 45%, 46% by 2030. So renewable purchase obligation is also increasing. So if you see only the projection of 2030, 400 gigawatt and renewable purchase obligation of around 45-46%. So that is basically there. And whereas the mix of generation, if you see, so the projection is, promote more of a solar. This catering 400 gigawatt, the solar plant load factor is around 22%. Whereas for thermal generation is at around 80%. So with renewable purchase obligation, it is 400 gigawatt multiplied by around 45%, and then you add PLF, which will come to an installed capacity of around 800 gigawatt of solar by 2030. And this I sync with the previous speaker, that why not 1000 gigawatt? Now the problem at a generation level is, solar will generate only when God says to generate, so when the sun is start shining. And In fact, wind has not taken off that well. So when you say renewable, solar is the major component. And solar creates its own harmonic if it is on grid sort of environment. So battery storage is inevitable. That has to come. So that's a ecosystem requirement as we move forward. I'm not looking for a too long-term plan, but only for a short term by 2030 per se. The challenge is battery storage cost. From 8 rupees, it has to come down to 2.3. So that was also indicated by the previous panelist. So more of a battery storage optimization plus technology and plus our Honorable Prime Minister said one nation, one grid, one frequency. So India currently is one of the largest synchronous grid. Nowhere in the world you have 265 gigawatt, one grid. But then it creates a problem of balancing the grid. In 2012, there was a huge blackout which happened. The entire nation stopped. And it happened consecutively 2 days. It was July 2012. So there are technologies like phaser monitoring units and wide area monitoring system which are getting pitched in order to balance the complete grid. So from the ecosystem wise, we have to have a mix of generation and match the consumption pattern, whereas we have to manage the grid from the stability point of view and also meet the nation's objective of one nation, one grid, one frequency, because you can generate in Gujarat and you can consume in Chennai. The good part is regulations, regulatory mechanism is also supporting it. You don't have any wheeling transmission charges. So with this ecosystem, I think we are all in fact working upon it, gearing upon it at a transmission level. And similar thing is happening at a distribution level as well. So the promotion of rooftop solar, grid balancing at a DISCOM level, having an objective of net metering and also network optimization. These are basically some ecosystem scenarios which I wanted to present here.
So as you mentioned that, right now because of the energy transition, the government has also on the transmission and the distribution side, they have increased the allocation from 2.5 to 4.2, now 9.5. So Govindji, in the cable industry, how do you see to tap this opportunity? Because this is also one of the very important component in the whole transmission system that is going to be placed. So how do you see and how do you tap this opportunity in terms of industry dynamics and opportunity, if you can say that, how is it different from the previous times in the capex cycle and now?
So, I mean, it's very easy. ज़्यादा rocket science नहीं है इसके अंदर. इंडिया में बिजली बनना स्टार्ट हुआ. So electricity consumption started in India around late 1880s या 90s के आसपास. 1900 पकड़ लेते हैं. तो 125 साल में we have reached to a capacity of 500 gigawatt as a nation, approximately, roughly. उसमें एनर्जी ट्रांजिशन चलता रहा, पावर आया, सोलर आया, हाइड्रो आया, विंड आया, सब इधर उधर चलते रहे. And now in next 5 years or 10 years, we are talking about another 1000 gigawatt addition. So what we have achieved in last 125 years, double of that consumption we are going to achieve in next 10 years. That is the broader scenario. Per capita consumption भी बढ़ रहा है, सब चीजें हो रही है. Now scaling up power generation is far more easier than scaling up power T&D. क्योंकि पावर जनरेशन को स्केल अप करना बहुत ईजी है. कैपिटल चाहिए, स्टैंडर्ड प्लांट्स हैं वो लगाने हैं. वी आर टॉकिंग दैट सोलर इज इंक्रीजिंग टू 1000 गीगावाट, अभी हमने सुना. बट ट्रांसमिशन एंड डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन T&D इज वेरी वेरी डिफरेंट बॉल गेम ऑल टुगेदर. आई मीन लॉट ऑफ पीपल आर देयर हु आर एक्चुअली working on the execution side on the panelist, and they would they would throw much more light on that part, because micro market dynamics play a lot of role in this entire transmission and distribution. तो उसमें local pressures है, local weather है, local चीज़ें हैं, labor है, everything is there. One of the critical component in this entire power T&D space is cables, because this entire ecosystem is now getting converted from, especially on the distribution side, from the overhead conductor to distribution cables. Because insulation chahiye, if you have to grow, if the voltage has to be high and everything. So critically what is happening is that since the per capita consumption is increasing or whatever is happening, the voltage is increasing. So distribution and transmission voltages are increasing. So earlier where there was 11 kV lines, now there is 33 kV lines. So that these all transmission is taking place or transition is taking place. And that leads to this cable demand in disproportionately, I would say, because now the overhead conductor would not be able to serve this piece. So you need insulated cables if you have to increase the power load of the distribution or the transmission, not on the transmission side, but specifically on the distribution side. So one part is this, which is very, very important. Second part, which I think is that lot of product development cycles are going through, because cable is a critical component in upgrading the distribution system of this of our country. So a lot of product development initiatives have to be taken. Lot of combined cables have to be put in, because like there is power cable, there are data cables also, which are equally growing. So if you can combine these two things, that distribution system can become a lot of robust. There are complications which need to be handled there. Then based on the local conditions, like there is an opportunity in EHV, which is insulated transmission cable, then MVCC, which are insulated conductors, which can protect or increase the longevity of the conductor and transmission lines. So these are all initiatives which are taking place, I think, within our country, and all the players like in the cable side also are kind of upgrading their infrastructure and their thought process to tune the market. At least the top 5-10 people who are actively working in the market.
So in the cable compound industry, Narrindra ji, Rajesh ji, you have made a very good market share in the industry. So now if we see the huge volume growth like Govind ji highlighted in the cable sector, then how do you see the uptick in cable compounds with respect to, because there are very few players in the industry who are in our country who is actually making compounds, and a lot of them are getting imported as well. So how do you see the overall market scenario? Because in the initial cycle, there was a lot of Chinese imports that were happening, or a lot of foreign imports, I would say, was happening. In this cycle, it is more on the indigenization side. So how do you think the opportunities for cable compounds?
Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I thank profusely for inviting us, me and Mr. Kothari. Though as you know that we are the compounder, as Mr. Govind said, that cable is a very important and integral part of generating power. So is the compounding, because the basic concept and basic technology starts from compounding. Because if you do not give the right grade and right quality of compound, then the right quality of cable cannot be made. Because other than compound, they use either copper or aluminum, which is which is available. That is not a problem. No technology is involved. Only sizes are involved. But the real technology lies in the compounding, and there, in their plastics, we are absolutely up and game for that, and we have world-class R&D. We are not only supplying to the local industry, but we are exporting to almost more than 50 countries. As you rightly said, there are still some compounds which are being imported from overseas, and the main reason for that importation is not that we are not capable of producing. Maybe a few grades of compound we cannot manufacture, we are in the process of getting ourselves ready to manufacture that. But the real problem lies in the mindset, of our utilities. But still, like, he said, for last 125 years, we have been generating power. The utilities are there for, last many decades. So that foreign suppliers, because those days the compounds were not being manufactured in our country, so those foreign names are registered with the utilities. And we find it really hard at times just to, influence them, just to convince them that our compound is also equally suitable, our compound is also equally capable and quality efficient in comparison with those foreign producers. Whereas they are reluctant to accept. I'm not saying all of them, but few of them, whereas we are exporting our compound, okay, to many developed countries, right? 50 countries we are exporting, right up to Brazil we are exporting. So they are consumer compound against the mites and likes of Dow Chemical, LG Chemical, Hanwha, Borouge. Whereas, so the basic thing is in our country also we need to change the mindset. Even our cable producer, they have started exporting cables from here right up to USA. And Ddev Plastic has played a very important and significant role in that. We have got many UL, because you cannot export the cable until unless the compound is UL approved. So Mr. Kothari will throw more light on that, but I can tell you this, that we have obtained so many UL approvals, and the cables are being exported out of our country right up to USA using our compound. So the change has to take place at many levels. First, we have to change our mindset, because everything starts from there only. We have to understand the technology, we have to believe in ourselves, we have to believe in our technology. And I accept and I agree to be able to achieve that kind of proficiency and that kind of efficiency, that of quality. You need to create that infrastructure, which we have created. And in fact, I can very humbly say that in Surangi, the plant we have, it is the single largest polymer compounding, producing site in the world actually. I'm not saying we're the largest, but on one side, nobody is producing that kind of PE compounding. So people have to believe in themselves, people have to believe. In India, what they are not producing? Why we talk about compound, why we talk about cables? So many other things now we're exporting. In defense also you see, previously everything was getting imported. Now we're on threshold of exporting. So we have to believe. But unfortunately, I can say very humbly, but very candidly, still there are many people at many levels, in utilities, they refuse to believe that in our country also there is a compounder, or there are compounders who can really, produce that kind of compounding quality, and they resist. And this is the biggest drawback in our country, just to give a leeway to any compounder or any cable manufacturer, because initially there were hardly any manufacturer producing 132, 220 or 400 kV cables. Now everything is produced in our country, So this is what it is, but compounding is a very integral, very important part. But I can assure everybody that not only means a time will come that when almost all the compounds will be manufactured in our country, and Ddev Plastic will play a very significant and pivotal role in doing so. Thank you.
So now coming onto the distribution side, how smart meters are getting deployed. So all of us know that, the government policies have been really favorable in terms of converting conventional meters of 25 crores to smart meters. So how do you, and this is something really changing for the consumer, for the country, because the whole new network is getting built up, Ayush. So how do you see this industry evolving, and how do you as, from Kimbal play a role in this whole segment of, reducing pressure on discoms and setting up this whole network? So how do you see this industry right now?
So one thing which my colleague and fellow panelists has covered is there's an energy transition that is happening. What is evident is the grid that we see today has been set up over the last 125 years, which Sir said. So 500 gigawatt at 125 years, and 10 twice that amount in 10 years. So that's going to have compounding challenges in the distribution of that energy. See, solar are set up ho jata hai. Aaj aap bolo, we went to a factory which is setting up 12 gigawatt per year. That's fantastic. And my colleague went to another factory which is doing somewhere around 6 gigawatt per year. 18 gigawatt सूरत के 2 factory power generate कर रही है. इसको evacuate करना and distribute करना is a nightmare. If we stick to the conventional ways, it is impossible. The grid is going to collapse for sure. So in a layman term. So this is where we come in. This is where companies like Kimbal come in. Where what we are trying to do is we're trying to add some technology. We're trying to automate certain processes in the distribution and make the distribution of energy efficient end to end. To be very honest, without it, it is impossible to meet the demand, to meet the future growth that the country is envisioning. So, without smart metering, okay, now coming to what smart metering is, right? See, smart metering is a building block in automating any activity in a distribution grid. Distribution grid starts from 33 kV substation and then getting the energy to the consumer, measurement of the particular usage of a consumer, and relaying the information back to the server. So you need to look at it. The grid today has 250 million consumers, right? What smart meter is, it is a IoT. It is a IoT device which is capturing the data at those 250 million endpoints and sending it to the remote location. So one of the use cases that we look at today in India for smart metering is that it cuts down the losses. So when I got into it, right, I remember Googling, India was suffering through a loss of 1.5 lakh crore a year, which was mind-boggling for me. When I saw that, मेरे को ये लगा था यार ये तो हम कल start करते हैं, खत्म कर देंगे, and energy, मतलब education India में free कर देंगे. So that is where we got into it. We're still far away from cutting the losses to zero. But what I'm trying to say is, ये hygiene है. इसके बाद भी अगर आपको grid को चलाना है और grid को sustainable करना है, so you need to have the insights कि कहाँ पे कितना आपका data use हो रहा है, कितना energy कैसे flow कर रहा है, LV network, the low voltage network कैसे perform कर रहा है, and you need to analyze these data and make actionable information out of it. So this is where, and as Kimbal, right, what we're doing is we're just not focusing on the measurement piece. So it's a solution, right? There's a box which is actually capturing the information. Then there's a communication network which is responsible for getting the data online. And then there's a data aggregation layer which is working on this data, creating information out of it. So as a company, we're doing all three. We manufacture these smart meters, we take the data online, we do private network deployment across the project sites, which is states in certain scenarios. And then we have cloud-based applications working towards this data. And the interesting things that you can come out with this data. So I can actually predict to a good accuracy a behavior of a consumer. When I say a behavior of a consumer, I can tell you that you get up at 7 in the morning, right? Because you switch on, you go to your washroom, you maybe take a bath, आपका geyser on हो जाता है, आपका power consumption change हो जाता है. I can tell you with high predictability कि आप कितने बजे office जा रहे हो. With that, I can even tell you कि सुबह traffic कितने बजे होने वाली है road पे. I can tell you आप शाम को कितने बजे आते हो, आप छुट्टी के लिए कितने time के लिए जाते हो, आप घूमने कितने बार जाते हो साल में. So this is the data, this is the information that this data brings in. एक distribution utility के लिए और एक पूरे ecosystem के लिए सबसे important चीज़ है कि predict करना किस समय कितनी बिजली चाहिए. As Deepak said, right, solar हम set up कर रहे हैं, but we are at the mercy of the nature. So that is where अगर जब solar का demand गिरता है या solar का generation गिरता है, तो आपका demand को responsive करना है. Again, smart metering plays a massive role over here, where you can tell, यार boss, अभी मेरे पास नहीं है generation की capacity, अब अपनी demand को maybe 24% से 25% से कम कर दो. आप AC को 22 डिग्री में नहीं चलाने के बदले you switch on your AC at 26 degrees Celsius. So non-essential loads, आप उसे कम करना start करो. All this can only happen when you have a smarter grid and when you have a smart metering. So this is the problem that Kimbal is trying to solve. This is the solution that we're trying to create. And the future is amazing. It is, again, it is just not the use case of theft. It is just not the use case of bringing in efficiency. It is the use case of supporting the demand that is coming in efficiently. That is where.
So with so many advantages of installing smart meters in terms of, a lot of places the billing efficiency has improved, you are getting real-time data, the country can manage it very well like you highlighted. Then, a lot of things where we always also see on the other part that, consumers always state that now my billing has actually increased, consumption has actually, the data looks overstated. So how do you see that with, convention, if you can highlight from the investor's point of view then?
So one thing that I heard today in every panel is people coming in saying कि यार ये mindset का problem है. थोड़ी देर पहले भी इस पैनल में किसी ने बोला यार mindset का issue है. इससे पहले वाले पैनल में भी मैंने सुना कि यार गीला कचरा और सूखा कचरा आप 2 डस्टबिन में नहीं डाल सकते हो, जिसमें सबको ही को पता है कि पूरे इन्वायरमेंट को, पूरे के पूरे ग्लोब को इम्पैक्ट करने वाला है. तो कंज्यूमर का एक माइंडसेट होता है. तो एंड इट्स नो वन फॉल्ट, वी आर एट फॉल्ट एट द एंड ऑफ द डे. In our organization, we are implementing an ERP, and we are a small organization, right? We started 12 years back. It's a nightmare to get that ERP implemented because it's a change management. एक consumer का behavior को हमें बदलना है. पहले वो bill काट देता था, अब वो bill नहीं काट सकता because to generate that invoice there has to be a manufacturing order in place. So it's a change management. Similarly, smart metering is a program which is affecting everyone in this nation. जितने भी लोग इस कमरे में बैठे हुए हैं, सब कोई, सारे consumers हैं energy के, and सब कोई का impact आ रहा है. What has not been done well is educating the customer the benefit out of it, educating the customer how it will impact the grid overall, and creating awareness around what smart meter does better than what the conventional meters were actually doing. So I feel yes, that is where we have lagged. But again, the beauty is entrepreneurship spirit is there all across, and people have taken this as a challenge to make the consumers more aware. The regulators is working towards it. The government has realized that there's a policy advocacy that is required. There's a awareness outreach program that has to be done. So all district managers, district managements are been actually told to create camps across the states where people can come up. There will be booths set up where people can come up and actually come in with their queries कि यार ये कैसे हो रहा है, ये क्यों हो रहा है. And another thing that is happening is there's the aspirational growth that is happening across the nation. I'll tell you, everyone in the India is coming in from that, and we have all heard that story, right? 1 bedroom, 1 AC to 4 bedroom, 6 AC story that is happening, right? At the end of the day, that leads to the increase in the power demand. And हम लोग सबको ही बात कर रहे हैं यार, year on year power demand increase हो रहा है. Power demand increase हो रहा है तो consumer का bill तो बढ़ेगा ही. It is not smart metering that is doing it. It is our profile, our way of living that is changing at a rapid pace. And energy is the core driver. Today AI is power hungry. आज कोविड के बाद में अगर एक घर में 4 लोग हैं तो 5 लैपटॉप हैं, 4 iPads हैं, and there are equal amount of mobile devices. So that has changed. That has drastically changed. We have learned from home. We have worked from home. We have everything from home these days. ये सारे आखिरी में तो पावर को ड्राइव कर ही रहना यार. पहले लोग ऑफिस चले जाते थे. तो
so there are 2-3 objective things also why I mean, by the way, just before commenting on power bill, India is one of the cheaper powers across the globe. So I mean, it's not that we are overpaying for the power. So if you compare with other developed countries or European US countries, their energy bills are much more higher than what we pay in India. So first of all, this is a qualification. But still, मतलब क्योंकि historically it has increased, तो उसके 2-3 बड़े reasons रहे हैं past में भी और future में भी रहेंगे शायद. One is the T&D losses, which everybody knows. So I think एक मतलब काफ़ी efforts हैं. It has decreased from 23-25% to now 17-18% over the period of time. तो वो थोड़ा rationalize करना पड़ेगा. Second is the populism policy of the government. तो free बिजली, agriculture को free बिजली, poverty line के below के customers को free बिजली. So all these things put load on the consumer. And third, which is very unique, I mean more unique to India, is the peak load. So India में पूरा जो T&D network है, that has to be designed based on the peak load demand and not on the regular peak demand. So that additional cost has to be borne by the customer because peak load in India is very different. क्योंकि यहाँ पे variety of cultures है, variety of मौसम है, variety of बहुत varied country है, तो यहाँ पे peak load बहुत differ करता है over a period of as a country as a whole. तो ये एक T&D extra cost थोड़ा सा लगाना पड़ता है. But having said and done, इतना सब कुछ होने के बाद में भी India has a cheaper power, and we should not give away that credit. We should not take away that credit from the government that they have been able to provide a competitive power tariff to the consumers.
I just want to add one thing coming out of here. So we have seen in the change management process which has gone in other industries. 25 years back there was a computerization program of banks. आधे SBI के लोग धरने पे बैठ गए थे. But then they started utilizing the benefit out of it and it was adopted. Mobile phone, DTH, and now Netflix or OTT platform. So these are basically transition in terms of technology which has happened, which has touched our daily lives. Now similarly, electricity has been most abused by politicians, by masses in general. So all these technology changes which has happened in other sectors need to have in electricity sector. It is inevitable. One part is grid balancing and second part is the distribution companies have to be profitable. If they are not profitable, if they are running under losses, you will not have power and you will not run Netflix. You will not have internet, you will not have any other facilities to run the lifestyle which you want to change. Now, to have this, a smart meter success is the only way, and this RDSS program which has been set by government is the only way to make distribution company profitable. So it has to be successful. There is no way out of it. Though there are other technologies in the developed nation which is called demand response. Now in demand response what you have different tariff of electricity in different times of the day in order to maintain the peak demand. So as the co-panelist said that managing demand is important. Similarly, changing the consumer behavior, non-critical loads in your home or in commercial establishment or in your industry can be managed efficiently if you have the demand response as the regulations which needs to come in. But before these regulations needs to come, you need to have a technology deployed at domestic, residential, commercial and industrial establishments in order to tell you what is your consumer behavior and how can you maintain that demand. So from Kimbal, we call ourselves more of a technology company rather than only a metering company because we are seeing the future. We have end-to-end solution right from acquisition of data, analyzing the data, communicating the data, and a cloud platform which does an AI on top of it. So consumer behavior and futuristic demand response which is eventually going to come is what we are aiming towards. And some smart application to tell the consumer that there is a risk of fire in your home or your AC has not been serviced. So these type of applications also will evolve once we have the smart meter rollout efficiently. And as Kimbal, we are proud to say that no other competitor, our competitor, are thinking in this direction. These are happening in bits and pockets, okay? Somebody is making a smart meter, some Oracle or Siemens is making a head-end solution, Jio or Airtel is giving a communication piece, but we are doing everything. So from the technology maturity point of view, which is inevitable, we are geared up for it.
Correct. So just one thing from investors perspective. मैं जब भी गोविंद जी से बात करती हूँ बोलते हैं बहुत ही simple business है केबल जैसे transformers भी एक जैसा बहुत ही simple business होता है तो अभी 2 years से everybody has been like really tracking this sector and it has been growing since last 2 years at a very good extent 2-3 years. तो हमेशा ना ये होता है कि इतनी ग्रोथ तो आ चुकी है अब इतनी ज़्यादा ग्रोथ तो हो गई अब और कितनी ग्रोथ हो सकती है हमेशा ये पर्सपेक्टिव रहता है कि कैसे फिर ये इंडस्ट्री तो in terms of domestic or in terms of exports also that whole shift is happening. तो if you anyone in the panel Rajesh ji, Deepak ji, Ayush, Govind जी anyone if you can highlight कि और कैसे ये इंडस्ट्री में growth आ सकती है और is it just the start or how is it?
So first of all, I will start from a different topic because Deepak ji has said and Saboo ji has said. Say consumer will end up complaining all the time. If there is a power outage, so consumer do not like it. And if there is no outage, if you have efficient power supply uninterrupted, then we are complaining about the bill which we have to pay. Everything comes with a cost. So efficient power supply will come with a cost. So that we all have to accept. This is first part of it. Now coming to how we can sustain the growth. Now the answer to this has been given by Mr. Saboo in the beginning, that what we have seen in last 125 years, we are going to see double of that in next 10 years time. So this kind of change in behavior and change in consumption pattern and change in our lifestyle is going to ensure that we will continue to grow at this pace for many, many years to come. I would like to quote a few of industry veterans when we talk about this confidence about the growth rate. Say in a private conversation, the biggest cable producer in the country, Polycab chairman, Indrabhai always says to his peer group that let us keep on adding capacity, let us not worry, whatever capacity addition we have declared so far, still will be short of the cable availability in India by 2029, 2030. This he has said a couple of years back. Then there is a report of Nirmal Bang a few days back that we'll see so many announcement of capacity addition has already taken place in the cable industry, but still we'll see the shortage in the capacity available for the cable, and we expect more capital allocation announcement coming forward in coming year or so. Why is it so? If we look at the bottom line of this, then I would highlight a couple of points for this. One is our expectation from our life, our lifestyle. So consumption is growing. This has been highlighted almost by everybody, and probably it is a very well-known fact. But another important point which came out from the first session on renewable, if we all were present, and also in the discussion from Mr. Deepak, he said that generating power is much easier, but evacuating it is much more difficult task. And the specification changes, location changes. So generating is one aspect, transmission and distribution is another aspect. And it is much more localized. So you need to have a different kind of a setup for evacuating a different kind of a power generating at one place. You need to have a different kind of setup for distribution. Say for example, all our cities, the skyline was all congested. To make it decongested, now most of the cable are being taken underground. That has created a huge demand. It will continue to create the huge demand for us. Now second part is that the voltage rating going up. So that also will generate a huge demand, because for that reason you have to replace the existing system of transmission and distribution. So this is something where we have not reached what you call a peak point, where we can say that, okay, we have reached the peak point, and from where we will be having a plateau. It is kind of a journey towards mountain, and we are, maybe I would say that we are at the bottom of the S-curve. We are bottom of the mountain, at the base camp of the mountain. We have still many years to go to the peak. Looking at our behavior on consumption side, looking at the different source of generating power. Because majority of power generation in India, even now or globally, is thermal. Okay, but with change from the environment awareness point of view, the thermal share will go down and renewable will go up, and that will create a huge demand for different kind of a transmission and distribution network. So these are the factors which will keep us growing maybe another 5, 7, 10 years at this rate. We do not see any challenge in that. And as far as the ecosystem is concerned, we see a big change in last 5, 7 years in Indian power generation and distribution and transmission industry, that we have created a very strong ecosystem. Any local setup or industry cannot survive or grow until let's have a very strong ecosystem. And in cable industry, I am associated with the cable industry distribution part of it. We can say very proudly that this industry has grown quite well. Today, India is considered to be one of the best cable producing market, and every market globally is looking at India as a sourcing place. This has happened because we have developed an ecosystem, say, started from looking from, say, what you call current carrying material like aluminum and copper, we are self-sufficient, we are quite efficient in that. Then comes the insulating material or compounds, different kind of compounds for different application. That is where people like us come into play, and we have provided a efficient ecosystem to our cable producer partners. So it is growing, and we have seen a way to success. Will continue to grow, and we have a very good credibility in international market as reliable supplier, not only for cable, but cable raw materials. And that will help us to continue growing in the years to come.
एक just add on बताता हूँ, तो ये भी एक critical चीज़ है. So अगर हम solar ecosystem पे bullish हैं, and if we are मतलब macro tailwinds को अगर हम buy करते हैं, so opportunity is huge in all the spheres of solar मतलब power generation to distribution to consumption to measuring the consumption, everywhere it is. But I have critically believe that the highest complication is in the transmission distribution because of various reasons which we have discussed. And जहाँ पे ज़्यादा complication होता है, वहाँ पे polarization होता है. So I would like to share an insight from the cable industry that out of 110 plants, cable plants in India, only 10 plants would be investing the way the demand needs to invest as a manufacturer or as a supplier. So this consolidation of the industry is also one factor which will enable those 10 plants to, or 10 players to grow at a faster pace than the industry. That's the additional point which I want to make with them.
Thank you, sir. We'll have the questions from the audience now. We'll restrict to 2 questions, then we'll take the questions later. Reporters are here with us for the entire day. Can you please raise your hands? Any question from the audience?
So everybody is fully convinced
Wonderful.
that energy transition is the way of life.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. I have an announcement. So we have Mr. Hitesh Doshi. He is the MD and chairman of Wari Group. He'll be joining us on live within few minutes. So yes, we'll join him in few minutes then.
We have management from Kimbal here. So I'm just wondering, what is the difference between smart meter and prepaid meter? Because I have seen a lot of opposition to prepaid meters in Maharashtra and many places. So just a simple question.
So prepayment is a configuration of a smart meter.
Okay.
Every smart meter can be configured as a prepayment or a post payment. So see, smart meter has a capability or ability to disconnect the power or control the supply of power to a consumer. How you configure it, it depends on the application that is running on the cloud. So what the government is trying to do is government to make the sector a cash flow negative or a working capital negative sector. They're focusing on prepayment as a way of moving forward, where you use the energy, you pay as you use the energy. So that is where it is happening, the resistance towards the prepayment.
So you also make prepaid meters?
Yes, every smart meter can be configured as a prepayment. And the problem is not with the concept of prepayment. The resistance is happening because what has happened is, let's say you have an error of last 5 years, which was maybe 5,000 rupees. With smart metering coming in and with prepayment coming in, those errors are deducted equally over let's say 10 EMI. So consumer ka kya ho raha, they went in, they recharged for 1,000 rupees and 1,000 rupees got deducted for the error. So that is another challenge that consumers are facing, which government is addressing actively now, or the regulators are addressing actively now.
Got it.
Smart meter ka koi problem nahi hai, because from the Kimbal side, I tell you, government says that, or the regulator says that your error should be less than 1%. We have our benchmark to make it less than 0.1%. So our meters tell you the right thing, the right meter reading, means it is 10 times better than what the regulators demand. The only thing is, how do you create a winning story politically? Eventually it has to happen, but then how do you plan the tariff? Whether you make it as a prepaid or postpaid, or whatever are your arrears, distributed in a particular manner. and how do you manage it? So that is not the only problem. Smart meter is not a problem.
Thank you, sir.
Hi.
We'll take one last question.
Sir, regarding smart meters only, so there are a lot of players of smart meters in India currently, some big players as well, and the number of smart meters that will be installed is limited, and life is of these meters, I suppose, will be very long. So are you planning to enter into some other meter things like gas meters or something like that?
So I'd like to address both the parts of the question. So India, as on date, the policy which is there, the RDSS scheme, that is envisioned to replace 250 million smart meters. This number came in 2016. Already the count has gone up to 320 million. And this is also last year that I'm talking about. See, India is growing at a massive pace, right? The consumer is increasing, urbanization is happening at a rapid pace. The new estimate of consumers in India is somewhere around 520 million by 2030. So over the next 6 years, we plan to have another 20 crore consumers to be added in the grid. So that increases the demand for the smart meters in itself. Second, what we have seen in multiple developed nations which has gone in for 100% of smart metering, like Japan, US, Singapore, they've started the next phase of AMI 2.0 or smart meter 2.0. See, today if you look at it, in the country we trade energy for around 10 lakh crore. And I think that with the demand increasing, this will double over the next 10 years or 5 years, whatever the time frame is. So the ROI of these measurement devices is much shorter. So you invest into it again if it brings in that value. So that's a second piece of it. See, the smart metering 2.0 is today we measure the load as an aggregated load. Tomorrow what I'm going to do is there's a concept called non-intrusive load monitoring. I can go on and on for that, but the point is that we're gonna actually tell you the energy consumed to particularly charge a car. So let's say you plugged your car to the grid at 7 o'clock. So the regulators or the distribution utilities want to know how much energy went in to charge that particular car. And demand response applications are going to come in. So that these call for replacement cycle of the smart meters. Second, so measurement is going to be there in perpetuity. There are companies like Landis+Gyr, Itron, they're global leaders. They've been there for more than 100 years. They're still growing. Top line of nearly $1.5 billion, $2 billion, and continuously growing. So that proves that the measurement demand always stays on. Second is, as a company, there are a lot of organic sectors that we can get into, which we're definitely planning. Gas metering is a fairly simple bet for us. There's a 110 million consumer under the city gas distribution scheme that is coming up, which again is a measurement piece and which is organic to us. But more than that, what we're really bullish on is creating information out of the data that is being captured by the smart metering. See, again, what Deepak also said was how we're different than our competitor is we do solution. We're just not a metering company, right? If you look at other projects, our competitor comes in with a meter. Siemens or Oracle will come in with the software piece. Jio or Airtel will come in with a communication piece. So there are 3 or 4 companies coming together to form a solution. Whereas with Kimbal, we offer an end-to-end solution. We are a solution-focused company, and we feel we can leverage the solution in multiple geographies, multiple use cases, and create value out of it. So that is what we are looking at expanding now.
And as for your question on geography, yes, we are looking for other geographies of Asia Pacific, Africa, and Latin America. So that actions have started.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for such an engaging session. I request Mr. Vivek Jain, Mr. Ashish Amin, Mrs. Tejasveen Amin, and Ms. Gunjan Kabra to honor all the panelists with memento.